Welcome to Pick Up and Deliver, the podcast where I pick up my audio recorder when I take the dog out for a walk and deliver an episode to you while we stroll around. I'm Brendan Riley. Well, welcome to Pick Up and Deliver, my friendly listeners. It is March 1st, taking my in-laws' dog out for a walk, something I'll be doing somewhat on the regular over the next couple of weeks as they are traveling. And I'm excited to talk to you because it's the first of the month. One of my favorite episodes is the Top of the Stack. Top of the Stack is, of course, the monthly How Have We Been Doing episode where we talk about what we've played. We talk about why we've played it. We talked about how it was, etc. It's a relatively mild episode in terms of the amount of energy it takes. It takes a little bit of prep because I have to print out something. So if you hear some rustling, it's because I actually have a piece of paper in my hand. But otherwise, it's about what you'd expect. Or maybe not. So I will share with you what I played this month. A few updates for the many various things I keep track of while I'm playing, and we'll talk about how it went. So, for February 2020, we'll start with my monthly stats. I played 58 games. That includes online plays, of course. 58 plays of 41 different games. My year total is 121 plays of 68 games. I've seen a nice uptick in my online plays. I think I have between 7 and 10 games running concurrently, which means that I log in 2 or 3 times a day, and I usually get to make moves on about half of those at any given time, which is a nice bit of gaming for like on weeks or days when I don't get any other gaming. It's nice to have those opportunities. And for the far-flung friends or friends I don't get to see very often, it's nice to get to play games with them. Speaking of which, if you're a listener and you would like to play games with me, I'm Wombat929 on Board Game Arena, Boîte à Jeux, and Yucata, and I'd enjoy playing games with you on any of those venues. So reach out to me either on the guild or there. It was a good playtesting month. We had 4 playtests of our own games this month and 2 playtests of other people's games. It's good to, help out in the design community by doing this kind of other work as well. I'm making good progress on my shelf of opportunity. My goal at the beginning of the year, I had 47 games on my shelf, and I wanted to get it down to 20 by the end of the year. I'm at 44 this month. At the end of the month, I started at 46, so I knocked 2 games off my shelf of opportunity. I'm also making progress on reducing the size of my collection. I've gone down from 365 games in the collection to 363. I started with 369, so we've got an overall drop of 6 games, which doesn't sound like that much, but if you were listening last year when I increased the number of games throughout, I'm feeling pretty good about this. My most played game this month, it was a tide. I had 3 games that I played 3 times each. That's Azul Summer Pavilion, Coup, and Codenames Duet. All 3 had 3 plays in real life. My most played game online was Through the Ages with 4 plays. Still yet to win against Ray Greenlee, the incredibly good Through the Ages player. I'm now averaging 20 to 30 points behind him instead of like 50 to 100, so I'm getting better, but it's slow going. I had 3 games on the top of my stack this month and 1 repeat. The 3 games were Dice Settlers, Azul Summer Pavilion, and Sentinels of the Multiverse. My repeat game was Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I am sad to say Buffy has still not gotten played. We got close, but we did not get it played. So it's still there. I'm going to leave it in that repeat slot until I get it played, just as a bit of, humorous public self-flagellation. I also did not get Sentinels of the Multiverse to the table. I was excited about this one. I got it used, and I keep hearing really good things about it, so I'm interested to try it. I just didn't get around to playing it or have the opportunity. On the other hand, like I said, I got Azul Summer Pavilion played a couple times, and Dice Settlers I also tried, although I will admit I tried that in the solo variant, the solo mode. So it is a game that goes solo, and I do like solo plays, but it's not my favorite way to take a game off my shelf of shame or shelf of opportunity, in part because solo games often play differently than the real-time game does. Although I would say Dice Settlers seems to play the same. It's an interesting little game. It's a sort of very light 4X game where you have a bunch of dice you roll, and then some of the dice give you a face that let you mitigate the other dice, rearrange them a little bit. And then on your turn, you get to take 2 actions, and the actions allow you to do things like settle a new space or get some resources, or there's a variety of other things you can do with the dice actions. The amusing part of the game, or the part that I find interesting, the limitation of only getting to do 2 actions is a really good answer to the problem of, well, what happens when you roll badly? Because a lot of times the more dice you roll, you're not actually getting more actions, you're just getting more options for actions. And admittedly, there's a dog over there that sees the dog I'm walking and is barking at us. So apologies about that. So it's got this interesting thing where as you recruit more dice, the way the game works, there's a landscape where you can go to get lands and you settle them. And then one of the actions you can do is to recruit workers or recruit settlers. And the settlers you recruit depend on the lands where you have settlements built. So if you have a settlement on a yellow space, then you're allowed to recruit a yellow die. If you have a settlement on an orange space, an orange die, and so on. So the dice you can get depend on the lands you've settled. Similarly, the amount of dice you get to roll depends on another factor. So you have a bag of dice, and each round you're going to draw out of the bag of dice. You can draw some dice out of the bag of dice based on how many dice you're allowed to roll. So you might have some really great green dice and you really want to do some raiding, but you only draw your white dice out. But that's okay. That's the way this kind of game goes. And like Altiplano, you don't put the dice back into the bag until you've drawn all the dice out. So it does not have the Orleans problem of you might buy or the Quacks of Quedlinburg problem, which I haven't played that one, but where you might buy a cool thing and never get it. So that's Dice Settlers. Good art by the Miko as well. So I had a bunch of first plays this month. I already talked about Azul Summer Pavilion. We had the quick shot episode where I talked about Walking in Burano and Artifacts Inc. We mentioned Dice Settlers. I talked about Drop It already, and Broom Service, and Azul Stained Glass of Sintra and Obscurio. You know what? I talked about Drop It and Azul and Obscurio. I talked about Broom Service. I'm sure I did. Let me know if I did not talk about Broom Service, and I will do so. And then Dragon Castle and Russian Railroads. So several different games. There are 16, in fact, new games that I had never tried before. 2 of those, Russian Railroads and Dragon Castle, I played online at Board Game Arena, so I haven't actually gotten to try those in physical form, but I still count it as having tried them. I did not play any new expansions this month. I did get to play Underwater Cities, and I used the expansion boards, the new triple layer boards with the nice insets that come with the expansion, but we just used the base game boards. We did not use the new expansion boards, so I did not count that as trying the expansion. That's more of like an upgraded components test. I did dust off 3 games this month. Remember, dust off means to play a game that you haven't played in a year or more. In this case, I had 3 games this month that I had not played in a year or more that I played again. That was Miskatonic School for Girls, Shakespeare, and Coup. All 3 were good. I think I've talked about all 3 a little bit here and there as I did the month. So not much more to say about those. Our family 20 by 5 challenge. I've talked about this. Instead of a 10 by 10, we decided to do a 20 by 5. And we're now at 19% on that. I've done very well getting plays of brass done. In fact, I'm no longer obligated to play brass anymore this year. I will, because I'm really enjoying it, but I have played my 5 games of brass. Nothing else is close to 5. We have a couple other games at 2 and a bunch of games at 1. We still have a few games we haven't played at all. I'm a little worried about Pulsar 2849 and Trickerion, though I do have one play of Trickerion done. Both of those are long games. It's going to be a challenge to get those played this year. But the other ones are coming along nicely. So I have a new challenge that I discovered and I thought looked fun. So I said, sure, why not add another thing to what I keep track of. I found a geek list. It's been going for several years now, though this is the first year I'm participating in it, called the 52 Game Challenge. This is a geek list that's been going, I think this is the 4th or 5th year they've done it now. And what they do is instead of having it's a challenge aimed at variety of games. What they do is they have a list of 52 prompts, and you're supposed to try to arrange gameplays or pick out gameplays so that you fulfill various elements of these prompts. Some of them have pretty simple things like 3 games linked by the same theme. Some of them have more complex ones like a game that has an anagram that you can make out of the title, and then that anagram has to inspire you to play another game. So 2 of the prompts are the game with whose title anagrams, and the game implied by the anagram title. So that's pretty interesting to look at how those different prompts can be fulfilled. And there's a variety of different things one might do to fulfill those prompts. I downloaded that list and looked through it, and I found 14 of the 52 games already filled by my current play load so far. I'm not entirely sure, but I think you also can't reuse a game. So it has to be 52 different games. So I loaded that, and I actually did it as a separate entry. My entry on the geek list is the place where I'm starting. So, but I'm keeping track of it, linked to it on my top of the stack entry, so you can find it there. I've made no progress on my leftovers, so nothing to report there. The only leftovers I have left are Via Nebula and Matainai. Both of those require a number of plays before I will have finished them from previous years. As I said, the collection size update is 363, although right now I have 5 games for sale, which as I sell those, the collection size will go down some, so that'll be good. On my top 50 challenge, in which I am attempting to play all 50 games from my top 50 list in the next 2 years. So I don't have to play them all this year, but by the time I get back to making my top 50 again, I need to have played all 50 games that were on my top 50. And I'm at 19%. So I've played 19 out of the 50. That can't be right. I've played 10. Sorry, I've played 10 out of the 50. So if you want to see that, you can go look at my top 50 list on Board Game Geek, where as I play the top 50, I mark them played. And then finally, the 3 games on my top of the stack for March are Seventh Hero, which is a small card game from, I think it's Hidashi Hayashi, the guy who made Love Letter, although I might be incorrect about that. And it used to be called Rent a Hero, but the copy I have is called Seventh Hero. Then Rattus, which is a game I got. It's out of print, I believe. You can get Rattus Cartus, the card game, but you can't get the base game, Rattus. And I got this at a game store in South Bend. And I'm excited to try it at some point. It's about a medieval town where there's lots of rats. And then that's the second one. Then the third game I've put on my list is Steam, the famous Martin Wallace train game. This one seems a little dubious to put on here. I don't know how I'm going to get this played, but I would really like to get it played. So I've got it on my list, and we'll see. It's interesting, my list of games, Shelf of Opportunity games, is getting a little thin of games that I'm immediately excited to try and haven't already had on my Shelf of Opportunity list. So generally I try to have 3 games that have not been on the list before, and then 1 game that's a repeat. I'm starting to run out of the non-repeats. unless I want to get, I'm gonna have to start getting into the silly games that I bought for various reasons, but I've never tried, like the Cattlemen and the Columbo board game. I mean, these would be amusing things to try, but yeah, it's gonna be an interesting question or effort now as I get more and more of the hobby style board games out of my shelf of opportunity, and what's left in there are sort of the games I've bought for kitsch. And the question of, do I really want to make the effort to play them? But I feel like I should, or else that's just a waste. So it'll be an interesting year, I think. As I was looking through the list, it was not immediately obvious to me what I should play. It also tells me I got to get Buffy off that list so I can reuse that repeat spot. So maybe this month. So I'm interested to hear from you. Regular user Chris Hickman has already started the Top of the Stack update thread over on the Pick Up and Deliver Guild at Board Game Geek, which is Guild 3269. You can just head over to Board Game Geek, and find the guild that way. Or if you want to go to the show notes at rattleboxgames.com, I have a link over to the guild from there. In each episode. So I'd be curious, what have you played? How did you do on your Top of the Stack? I know that a number of users have been designating a public Top of the Stack to see how well they're doing on knocking things off of their shelf of opportunity. So I'm curious to hear, how did you do? What did you get played? What was your biggest surprise game experience this month? Did you get to play on Leap Day? Did you have any neat, unique game experiences? I ended up having a pretty fun Leap Day game-wise. We played an episode of Sherlock Holmes, which was interesting. It's case 7 of the Carlton House mysteries, and at the beginning it says, this case will take you longer than usual, which was a really interesting problem to announce. And then, certainly not to spoil anything, and then the number of places that Holmes went was roughly equivalent to the number of places that he usually goes, which means that if you went to extra places like we did, your score was not very good. Our score was negative 30 on this, even though we did figure out a significant portion of the mystery. We missed a couple key ideas, but then we played The Bloody Inn, which is one of my 20 for 5 games. And again, it's really interesting because it goes pretty fast. You only take 2 actions per round, and then the round is over. So you have to be very aggressive in terms of getting rid of your corpses and that sort of thing. I think I've talked about this game already, but the idea is you are a family of people running an inn, and you are trying to make money usually by either recruiting to your dastardly service the people who stay in your inn, or murdering them and stealing their money. And often you have the people that you recruit to your service help you with the murdering and stealing. The game, it's a really interesting mechanism by which you have this staff, these people who work for you, and if you use them to do the thing that they're good at, then they don't leave your service. So like, you could get a guy who's really good at building annexes, which are these extra houses where you can bury corpses, but they also give you special powers. If you use him to build an annex, he'll come back to your service after you use him. There's other people who are really good at bribing. If you take them, then they're good at helping you recruit people from the inn to work for you. But then if you use say you want to build a level 2 annex, use the annex guy and one of the bribing guys, or the bribing guy, to build your annex. The bribing guy leaves. He's like, I don't really like building stuff. So after he helps you, then he leaves and you don't have him anymore. So there's a really interesting push-pull because it takes an action to get people. So you don't really want to get them and then give them away right away. But I also found I was very rarely keeping people more than one time. That I would use them once for their special thing, and then on a second play, I would use them for something else. So it's an interesting push-pull that happens as you're playing. But the game also feels remarkably short and on turns. The whole game you play through the deck twice, and I think this last game I had 4 annexes and 3 or 4 corpses. That was it. And the game's over. So there's also a really interesting mechanism where you can't have very much cash. That in order to When you take payment, you get cash, but you can't have more than 40 livres, which is the French currency the game uses, at once. If you have more than 40, you don't have room for it, and it would be suspicious. So you can launder that money by taking an action to exchange livres for checks, or you could exchange the checks back into livres if you need to. But it takes an action, and you only get 2 actions a round. So it takes half of your round to move your money into a savings bond, basically. But if you don't do that, you can't win because you're capped out at 40 livres. So that's a really interesting bit of the gameplay. I'm sure I'll talk about this game a bit more when I finish with my 5 plays. But for now, I think that's going to be about it for that. So we played that, and we played Sherlock Holmes, and the last game we played was the exit game Dead Man on the Orient Express, which was really interesting because the game is basically a parody of Murder on the Orient Express, and they give you a sort of serial numbers filed off version of Monsieur Poirot. In fact, if you know the Agatha Christie tale, her detective is named Poirot. His first name is Hercule, spelled like Hercules. And of course, the fake detective in your story is Achilles Pousseau. So it's almost Poirot. It's pretty funny. But it's a nice mix of puzzles that comes through at level 4 difficulty, which was about right. We ended up taking 4 clues, I think, almost all of them toward the end, that I think we were just getting tired, but we had trouble seeing some of the puzzle that we were supposed to do in the final one. So that was interesting. So that was my leap day gaming. So I'm interested to hear what you have coming up in March. My March looks like it'll have some potential for really good gaming. On the horizon, I could see I'm going to have a game day in mid-March at my house, which should result in a couple big games played if I can wrangle some people to do that. And then I have spring break at the end of the month, so hopefully I'll be able to do a little bit of gaming there. Of course, I have a lot of work to do too, so it's like, the way I make my living gets in the way of gaming. That's okay. That's about it for me today. I hope that you pop over to Board Game Geek Guild 3269 and let me know what you've been playing and how your February went, and post your top of the stack for March. Make yourself publicly accountable to a bunch of internet friends who won't judge you badly if you don't make it. Also, just as a final note, I noticed that Dan H., can't remember his last name, has a game called Buzz, I think it's called, coming out from Next Move Games at Gen Con. He is one of the hosts of the podcast of Nonsensical Gamers, and one of the people who coined the phrase top of the stack. So check that game out if you think it sounds interesting. It looks like a sort of puzzly abstract game with a bee theme. So I'm interested to see what that would be. Well, until next time, thanks for joining me on my walk today, and I hope your next walk is as pleasant as mine was. Bye-bye. All right, turning the page here.
Brought to you by Rattlebox Games.